Great. So, hi everyone. This is Arpit. I'll be your TA for this course, Wildlife Ecology in NPTEL. So today we have our first live session. Uh, so this is how the schedule is. So we'll have sessions every Friday from this week till 11th of October at 6 to 8 p.m. And yeah, at the end of the course, there'll be a revision session right before the exam where we go over all the topics covered in the course. Here are a few important links. So the first one is the link to the session that you're currently attending. Uh, this is where we'll be having our classes or live sessions. The YouTube link is the link to my channel where you will find the videos uploaded for all the sessions. So today's video I'll upload after the class today, and so on. For every week, I'll keep updating the videos. The Google Drive contains the PowerPoint presentation and any other material we'll be using for these live sessions. So you can go to this link and go through the presentation that I'm showing you right now and all further presentations. Does anyone have any doubts or questions regarding all that? Okay. First we'll talk about how the module and the course is structured. So the current module is the first module which we'll be talking about, which is introduction. The first video is about introduction to ecology. The second one is a historical overview of ecology, and the third one is uh, ecology and how it relates to evolution. And in the next module, that is next week, we'll be talking about ecological structure. So for the course, in NPTEL, you'll have assignments every week, which will be MCQs based on the topics from that week. And the final exam will also be MCQs. And there'll be three kinds of questions. Recall, which is basically you remembering stuff that was taught to you. Assignment, which is questions from the assignment. And open questions are questions where they test how much you have learned about the broad topic. So we'll begin with week one, introduction. So the first video was on the basics of ecology. So what is ecology? So ecology comes from two words that have their roots in oikos and logos. So oikos means home and logos means study. So ecology is basically the study of home in a broad sense. We are given two definitions of ecology. The first is ecology is the scientific study of interactions among organisms and their environment. And the second one is ecology is the scientific study of interactions that determine the distribution and abundance of organisms. So the first definition, what it basically means is that uh, let's say we have any organism, let's say we have a dog, right? Let's say you have a pet dog. Uh, and there are other street dogs and cats that are there present in the street and all around your house and all that. So how your dog interacts with these street dogs and these street cats, and how your dog interacts with you and with its environment as a whole is what is ecology. And hello. Yeah, sorry. So the second definition is more kind of scientific. So basically what it means is ecology is the scientific study of interactions that determine the distribution and abundance of organisms. So for example, let's say we have some monkeys, let's say a langur. So determining how they are distributed across India, so where all they are found, and how many individuals of these langurs are found in different places is what is ecology. So basically studying all the interactions that are determining why these langurs are found in this range or in this many numbers. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So what do we study in ecology? So there are a lot of different things that we study in ecology. The first is habitat, next is biodiversity, population interactions, community interactions, and effects of changes. So we'll go into each of them. So first is habitat. So what is habitat? Habitat is basically the natural home of an animal. So let's say for example, the langur, where does it live? It lives in the trees and forest. So that is basically the natural home or the habitat of that animal. So different animals have different habitats. For example, these polar bears live in the poles or Arctic regions. Whales live in the oceans. Zebras live in savannas, and camels live in deserts, and so on. So we have a lot of different organisms or animals and even plants around us. And where these plants or animals are found, and where they live, and where they derive their nutrition and all their do all their daily activity is basically the habitat of that organism. Next is biodiversity. So biodiversity basically relates to uh, in an area, what are the different species that are found, what is their distribution and abundance, right? So, for example, in a forest, you might find a lot of things like different kinds of trees, then like bears, moose, or even like wolves and stuff. So this is basically the biodiversity of that area, of that forest. On the right-hand side here, we have two images just to compare. So in the first, like basically these are like two patches of land. In the first one, there are a lot of different types of trees that you can see. And the second one, there are some types of trees, but not a lot of them. And the number of different types of trees here is also very less. So basically, the number of different kinds of trees that are found in each given area is the species richness or the number of different species found in that given area. And diversity, yeah. And the other thing that is related to biodiversity is basically the abundance of each species. So basically here we have a more distributed abundance so that all the different species of plants that are found here are basically found in more or less equal number. Whereas here there is only one species that is dominating and the other species are found in very less numbers. Right. Uh, the next thing we study in ecology is population interactions. So, what is a population? So, a population is basically a group of uh, organisms that belong to the same species and live in the same geographical region. Right. So, the interactions between these organisms of the same populations uh, of a given species is called population interactions. So these interactions might be of many different types. For example, it might be uh, competition, such as these two owls competing for a piece of food, or it can be it might be competition but not related to food. For example, here these two males of wildebeest are fighting probably for female attention. It and it can also be cooperative, such as these herds of elephants living together and helping each other in different things. So, a study of these kinds of different interactions that happen in a population is termed as uh, population interactions, and that is one of the aspects of ecology. The next is community interactions. So, community interactions is basically interactions within a given community, and a community is basically all the different species that are present in a given area. So, for example, like community interactions can be of various different types. For example, this uh, predation where like this leopard is killing this uh, buck, or we have a bear killing a fish and eating. So basically, this is a predator and this is a prey. We also have other kinds of interactions such as pollination, where these bees get nectar from flowers and also help them disperse their pollen to other individuals of their species so that these plants can also propagate. We also have these other interactions where like many different kinds of herbivore species or like mammals might aggregate together to drink water and like move in groups together because it helps them basically look out for each other. In if like there are a lot of different species, they can look out for a lot of different kinds of things. For example, this giraffe from its high vantage point might see something from very far away, but the others might not. And thus, when the giraffe is alarmed, then the others might also come to know that, okay, there is a predator around here. The next thing we study in ecology, so the study of all these interactions in a given community is called as community interactions. Uh, the next thing we study in ecology is the effect of changes. So changes as in, for example, like climate change or global warming and how it is affecting ecology or like plant and animal life over the world, and also other processes such as desertification and all. So desertification is basically conversion of a green piece of land into a desert. So there are a lot of ways in which this can happen. One way that's told in the lectures was when like goats eat a lot of the vegetation in a dry area, the soil starts to erode, and due to erosion, there is uh, a lot of minerals and nutrients of the soil are lost, and thus the plant life is not able to regenerate, and the plant goes barren. And after a while, due to other things like heat and like if the water bodies nearby, there are no water bodies nearby also, then slowly it can evolve into a desert. Uh, there's also a general overview of how climate change can also cause desertification. Look, does anyone have any questions? Okay. So basically, let's say we have a green piece of land, but due to increased carbon dioxide emissions and all that, there's a lot of global warming and climate change, which is increasing the extreme events that we are facing. So the frequency of floods, droughts, and all that over all across the globe has been increasing since the recent, like past few years. This has led to desertification in a lot of different places, or like submergence of islands and stuff like that. So these are also some of the effects, some of the changes that we study in ecology. So there are three basic approaches to ecology and how we deal with this ecological questions or subjects. So the first is a theoretical approach, where we are basically using equations and models to explain like empirical observations or like build frameworks using mathematics, which can basically be used to like conduct experiments or like derive some uh, information regarding like wild animals or species or their behavior and all that. Uh, Laboratory approach is basically when we are using the scientific method of formulating hypotheses and testing them through experiments. So, for example, let's say we have some hypothesis that we want to test. So, for example, we feel that algae grow well in like soil that is rich in, let's say, iron or something. So, what we can do is in a lab, we can set up like few different beakers where we have water. In some of them, we'll add a bit more iron. In some of them, we'll remove the iron. And there'll be one control one where we have not manipulated the amount of iron in the water. And we see how the growth of algae changes in these three different tanks. And if we find out that algae grows more in the tank which has more iron in the water, we can establish that basically iron is something that like these algae need to grow, right? Or iron helps in better growth of the algae. And so this is basically laboratory approach where you do experiments in the laboratory and you basically try to answer form hypothesis or answer questions about ecology. And the third one is basically field approach, where we basically go out into the wild, into different uh, like habitats and places, such as forests or like grasslands and all. And there we go and just observe different species of animals and we see their interactions, and basically, that's how we learn more about them. And that's how we basically form hypotheses or like uh, think about what might be happening in the world. That's the third approach to ecology. Next, we have a historical overview of ecology. So does anyone have any questions till now? Okay. So in the second part of the course, we talked about a few different people who have influenced the field of ecology, starting from Theophrastus, who was a Greek scholar who lived from 371 to 287 BC. He was a student of Aristotle, and he is considered to be the father of botany because he was the first one. He was probably the first one who described the interrelationships between animals and their environment. And also, he published this book called Inquiry into Plants. Uh, Not a book, basically a set of 10 books, a collection of 10 books, where he tried to classify different plants according to their mode of generation, like how they grow and all that, like how they do they come from seeds or spores and things like that, based on their localities, as in geography and where they are found, sizes of the plants, and according to their practical uses, such as are they used as food, are they used as herbs, etc. So he developed a system to classify plants, and he also discussed and like found out the importance of like based on like these data collection about these various different plants, he was able to figure out the importance of soil and climate to plants. So for example, some of these plants might grow in a specific kind of soil because they need like maybe some nutrient or maybe some thing that is present in that soil, and there are other plants that can only grow in certain temperatures or certain like most of the rainforest plants generally tend to grow in areas where there's a large amount of rain throughout the year. But there are other plants which are very dry, such as the plants like cactus, which are found in the desert, which don't need that much of rain. So things like that are things that he figured out, that basically climate and soil are things and the abiotic things that affect plants and plant growth and where they are found in the uh, where the plants were found in the world. Next, we have Carolus Linnaeus, who was a Swedish botanist, physician, and zoologist. He lived from 23rd May 1707 to January 1778, and he is considered to be the father of modern taxonomy because he created a system of naming and classifying species that is more or less, in a way, like it has been changed over the years, but is more or less the same thing that he had initially suggested. So this is what he suggested. So basically, based on the different characteristics of different organisms, they are divided into different groups called species. So basically, one species is, let's say, Homo sapiens. We are Homo sapiens. A species, Homo sapiens, is basically all the organisms who basically look like us, who are us basically genetically and all that. Uh, Genus is basically a group of species that are related to each other. So, for example, this feature called hypho. This feature, high forehead and thin skull bones, are basically what distinguish us from all the other species that are present in the genus Homo. But all the other species that are present in the genus Homo, such as the apes and all, uh, the great apes, chimpanzees and all, are basically hominids that have upright posture and large brains. Right. Then a group of genus that are very similar are grouped together into a family. Family goes to order, then class, phylum, and finally we have something called kingdom. So basically, kingdom is a very broad classification which contains all the plant animals. There's another kingdom for plants, and other bacteria and others have their other kingdoms. In animals, we have different phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And basically, the name that we have the binomial classification that we have, such as Homo sapiens. This method of naming species is basically something that Carolus Linnaeus came up with. And that is basically a standard approach, a standard thing that is followed throughout the world, so that we all know if we are talking about Homo sapiens, we are talking about the same species. Or if we are talking about Panthera Leo, we are talking about the same species, same lion that is found everywhere. Okay. So the next person is Thomas Robert Malthus. He was English cleric and scholar, and he wrote a book in 1798 called he, an essay on the principle of population, where he basically described how populations can grow via geometric progression. So, for example, let's say we have two individuals of a given species, let's say two rabbits. They can reproduce to produce four rabbits, and these four can in turn reproduce to produce eight rabbits. So each rabbit is producing two rabbits each, and that's how basically population growth occurs. And population growth is an exponential curve. And his thoughts in this essay basically influence studies that are carried out in population ecology. Next, we have Alexander von Humboldt, who was a Prussian polymath, geographer, naturalist, and explorer. So, a naturalist is basically someone who has a broad knowledge about uh, nature, flora, both flora, fauna, and like wild animals and birds and everything. They're basically people who go out to nature and try to observe things and try to uh, think about things and figure out, okay, maybe this is why this is happening and all that. So basically, a naturalist has a lot of information about a lot of different things in nature. Uh, so Alexander von Humboldt was a naturalist who performed quantitative work on botanical geography. So basically what he did was, as people before him, such as uh, even Theophrastus had identified that various plants are found in only some places and some plants are found in only other places. So what he did was he tried to put a quantitative framework into all of that, and he basically is considered as a father of biogeography, which deals with why different species are distributed in different geographical regions of the world. Next, we have Alfred Russel Wallace, who, along with Charles Darwin, is credited to uh, basically have uh, conceived the theory of evolution. So both of them arrived at the theory of evolution to the natural selection independently. Uh, he was also, so he's a British naturalist, and he also worked on biogeography. Mm, And
Sorry, you're on mute.
okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, sir.
When was I muted? Like, was it here or since the beginning?
No, sir. Just 2 minutes ago.
Oh, uh, yeah. So basically, uh, yeah, Wallace and Charles Darwin came up with the theory of evolution and natural selection. Herbert Spencer is an English philosopher who was best known for giving out the expression survival of the fittest, which basically captures the essence of evolution and natural selection. So we'll uh, talk about evolution and natural selection in a bit. Uh, Ernest Haeckel was a German biologist who basically coined the term ecology and laid down a lot of foundational work for the field. Vladimir Vernadsky was a
Speaker.
Russian mineralogist and geochemist who wrote the 1996 book called The Biosphere. He was one of the first scientists
का
to
नाम क्या है?
recognize that oxygen, uh,
Adios, amigo.
nitrogen, yeah, yeah, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere result from biological processes such as biogeochemical cycles. So uh, basically, what happens is a lot of oxygen that is found in the atmosphere is uh, basically produced by plants when they photosynthesize. So they use sunlight to basically create carbohydrates and carbon-based foods, and they release oxygen. Nitrogen is cycled through the bodies of like various plants and animals. So basically, plants take up nitrogen from the soil, and animals that eat plants get nitrogen, and other animals that eat other animals also get nitrogen from them. And when they all of them die, basically, the decomposers that we have in the soil basically decompose all the organic matter that is present, and the nitrogen and carbon that is present in the body of different animals and plants basically goes back to the soil again. So these are basically the different biogeochemical cycles that we have. And Vladimir was one of the first scientists to recognize that these different gases and elements that are found in nature, like oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide, are basically uh, resulting from biological processes, like biological activity. Arthur Tansley was an English botanist who introduced the concept of ecosystem into biology. So, an ecosystem is basically all the biotic and abiotic factors that are present around a organism. So, for example, let's say we are talking about a fish in a pond. So, the fish, other fishes of the same species, other fishes of different species, other aquatic creatures such as frogs and aquatic plants and all that that are found in the pond, along with the abiotic factors such as the salinity of the pond, the temperature of the pond, and all that basically constitute the whole ecosystem of the fish. So Arthur Tansey was the person who introduced the concept of ecosystem into biology, and he also founded the British Ecological Society, which is was basically one of the first societies that focused on ecology and the promotion of ecology and the science of ecology. Next, we have Charles Sutherland Elton, who was an English zoologist and animal ecologist. He is a pioneer of modern population and community ecology, and he is a pioneer in the study of invasive organisms and is also known as the father of animal ecology. So, invasive organisms are basically organisms that are from a different geographical region that basically come to a new region and invade that place. So, for example, lantana is a very famous invasive, most common invasive plant that is found in India. So, what happened is someone from outside bought an lantana during trade, and after that, this plant has been so because it grows very fast and it has no natural predator found in India. What happens is it keeps on growing and it takes up all the resources and nutrition that is needed for other plants nearby to survive and uh, other plants nearby to survive, and it kind of takes over a forest. So all the plants around it are uh, decreasing in number, while the lantana population is increasing in number. So these kinds of plants or these kinds of animals are known as invasive uh, animals and plants or invasive organisms, which basically come from a different geographical region and then occupy most of the area of the new geographical region. Next, we have George Evelyn Hutchinson, who was a British ecologist, and he put forward the theory of interspecific competition. So basically, different species are competing for the same resources. For, let's say, for food, is something that he basically put forward that, for example, let's say we have uh, zebras and goats that are basically present in the same area. Let's say zebras and wildebeest, which are generally found in the same area in like savannas. So basically, both of them are eating grasses, and because grass is a limited resource that is available to both of them, uh, if uh, zebras are better at eating grass compared to wildebeest, they will eat more of the grass and they will get more of the resources, and thus the wildebeest will generally like tend to decrease in number and eventually die out. And this is basically competition between different species of animals. So this is competition for the same resource. This is like also called as interspecific competition because more than one species, like two species or more species are uh, present in the interaction. And he also wrote a so Hutchinson also wrote a treatise on limnology. So limnology is basically the study of inland aquatic ecosystems, such as inland as in like ponds, rivers, and everything apart from oceans that are found inside land. So basically, he studied ecosystems, pond ecosystems, river ecosystems, and all that, and he published a treatise on limnology. He's also known as the father of modern ecology. Next, we have Alfred James Lotka and Vito Volterra. So Lotka was a US mathematician and statistician, whereas Volterra was an Italian mathematician and physicist. Both of them are known for developing the Lotka-Volterra equations of predator-prey relationship. So basically, what happens is, let's say you have a uh, predator, which is a tiger, and let's say we have a prey, which is a deer. So let's say in a forest, we have a large population of deers and a small population of tigers. So since there are more deers than the tigers can eat, what happens is the tigers are always getting food and they're able to reproduce and produce more offspring. So the number of tigers slowly keeps on increasing. Uh, then at a point, what happens? The number of tigers increases so much that the number of deer is less for them, or basically the deers are getting better at evading the tigers slowly. So what happens is uh, because there are a lot of uh, because there are a lot of tigers, the number of deers that are present, the number of deers that are caught every day are more, and thus the deer population tends to decline. And once the deer population tends to decline, then the tiger population again tends to decline because there is a shortage of food, and thus like the population, like basically the abundance of tigers depends not only on the abundance of deer, which is the prey, but also on the abundance of the tiger indirectly, which is the predator. And for deer also, the abundance or the number of deers depends not only on the number of tigers, but also indirectly on the number of deers. So basically, Lotka and Volterra came up with a mathematical equation describing the whole situation, where basically they have something called the Lotka-Volterra equations of prey-predator relationship, which basically predicts the population growth of prey versus the population growth of predator and how it evolves across time. Um, and lastly, we have Eugene P. Autumn, who was an American biologist, uh, who is best known for the book Fundamentals of Ecology that was published in 1953. It is still one of the standard textbooks that people are following. And basically, this is like a comparison of all the work in ecology that was done until that point, and basically strengthen the field of ecology as a separate study, proper study. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. In the next part of the week, so it talks about ecology and evolution. So basically, we first understand what is ecology and what is evolution. So ecology is basically the scientific study of interactions among organisms and their environment, as we were talking about. And evolution is the genetic adaptation of organisms to their environment. So ecology is basically a study of an animal and its interaction with its environment, current interaction that is going on, like in present time. But evolution is basically studying how that organism is adapted to live in that environment, how over the course of time that species or organism has evolved or changed to be uh, like to survive better in that given habitat. Okay, so yeah, first we'll talk about this thing called genetic adaptation. We'll understand what that is. So adaptation is basically any alteration in the structure or function of an organism uh, by which the organism becomes better able to survive and multiply in its environment. So basically adaptation is um, let's let's say for bats, having wings, having wings is an adaptation for bats because that helps them survive and basically fly around in their environment and hang on trees and live in the environment. Uh, Birds also, for birds, wing is an adaptation because it helps them fly and cover large distances and helps them survive and migrate to different places and multiply in the environment. Genetics is basically something that is relating to genes. Genes are basically uh, sequences of DNA, informational sequences of DNA that are present in our body that basically help code for different traits or functions. Uh, so genetics means relating to genes or to heredity. And your heredity means passing of traits across generations. So all in all, genetic adaptation basically means inheritable fitness. So yeah. So basically, if an organism is more adapted to survive in a given habitat, it is said to be more fit in that habitat compared to another organism. For example, a fish is more adapted to survive in water than humans, even though we are swimming or we are going diving and everything. But a fish is more able to survive, and that's why the fish is more fit in water. Right. And genetic adaptation is basically inheritable fitness. So basically, traits that are inheritable and that can help you adapt to your environment are called genetic adaptations, or basically traits or characteristics that help you function better or survive better in your habitat or environment. And if those traits are heritable, that is, they can be passed from you to your offspring, then they are called as genetic adaptations or inheritable traits. Uh, One example of adaptation is basically camels. So not one example. So basically, we'll talk about the different adaptations that camels have to survive in desert. So basically, a camel has a hump, which is basically used to store fat, so that if it does not get food for a long period of time, it can still use the fat that is present in its hump to get energy from it. That's why, like healthy camels, which have a lot of food and all food and water, their humps are more like tight and higher. And if like a camel is not getting a lot of food, the humps tend to become like folds of skin. Yeah. because it does not have a lot of fat. Camels also have padded legs. So basically, padded legs are what is it? Uh, for example, this is a normal leg, and this is basically a padded leg where you have more surface area. So camels have a padded leg, and that is because a padded leg helps them prevent sinking into the desert sand. So how does this work? So basically, let's say a camel has, let's say 100 kg weight or something. Okay. And let's say the area of this kind of foot might be something like, let's say A, small a, and let's say the area of the padded foot is bigger, capital A, and we have small a is less than capital A. Right. So basically, the force that is exerted by the camel on both of these different kinds of legs would be 100 G, 100 into so 100 into gravitation constant, 9.8 meter per second square. Right. So this is the same amount of force that is being put on both the legs. But here we have an area of small a, here we have an area of capital H. So in the first case, the whole of the force, 100 g of force, is distributed over a smaller area, A. In the second case, it is distributed over a larger area, capital A. So when you have a foot like this, which is not padded, which is basically kind of sharp, uh, basically it will tend to sink into the ground because most of the force is concentrated on this area. Whereas if you have a padded foot, your force is evenly spread out across a larger area, and thus you don't tend to sink into the desert. Right? So that's why camels have padded foot. The other adaptations that they have are basically concentrated urine. So camel urine has a very less amount of water. This is to prevent the loss of water in a desert where it's very difficult to find water. And they have very large eyelashes so that if there's a lot of wind or if there's a lot of wind and a lot of sand is floating around and coming into their eyes, it like the large eyelashes can prevent the sand from actually getting into their eyes. Okay. So basically these different traits or these different characteristics that the camel has, such as the hump, the padded legs, concentrated urine, and large eyelashes, are basically adaptations that help it survive better in its natural environment, which is the desert. Okay. So a camel is adapted to the desert, and these are the different adaptations or the different functional traits that it has, which help them survive in a desert. Fitness is basically the ability of a particular organism to leave descendants in future generations relative to other organisms. So, for example, let's say we have uh, one individual A and one individual B, and A can produce 10 offsprings, and B can produce, let's say, 100 offsprings. Okay, so in this case, the fitness of B is more than fitness of A because B can produce more offsprings or leave more descendants for its future generation compared to A, which can only produce 10, whereas B can produce 100. Now let's say, but like the number of organisms that the number of offsprings that you leave is not exactly fitness. Fitness is basically the number of offsprings that survive in the next generation. So let's say, for example, uh, A has 10 offsprings, but one of them dies. So in the end, 9 offsprings of A survive, whereas B has 100 offsprings, but since B has 100 offsprings, he is not able to take care of all of them properly, and just 7 of them survive. So now A is leaving 9 offsprings that are surviving in the next generation, whereas B is leaving only 7 offsprings that are surviving in the next generation. So even though B produces more number of offsprings compared to A, it is not able to take care of them so that they survive in the next generation. And that's why the fitness of A is higher in this case, because more offsprings of A are able to survive to the next survive in the next generation. Evolution basically acts to maximize fitness of an organism or a species through the process of natural selection. So we'll understand this statement in a bit when we talk about natural selection and evolution. So first we'll learn a bit more about fitness. So uh, here are different characteristics of fitness. So first is fitness is environment specific. So for an organism in a given environment, you have a fitness value. If you take the organism and put it in a different environment, you'll have a different fitness value. For example, a camel, as we talked about, might be very considered to be very fit in a desert. But let's say if you were to pet a camel and you wanted to keep a pet camel in the city, the camel is basically not very fit in the city because it has no adaptations that help it that can help it uh, survive better in the city. All the adaptations that it has are for the desert. So basically, fitness is environment specific. If you have an organism in one environment, it might have certain fitness, but if you move it to another environment, the fitness of the organism might increase or decrease based on the environment. The second thing is fitness is species specific. So one species will have a certain amount of fitness, whereas another species will have a different amount of fitness. And yeah, basically that's it. The third point is high, as we saw before also, higher reproductive rate does not mean higher fitness, but higher survival of progeny does. So here, as we saw, B has a higher uh, reproductive rate because it can produce 100 organisms, whereas A can produce only 10. Whereas, but uh, most of the offsprings of B die off because they don't get enough parental care, whereas most of the offsprings of A survive. So the survivability of offsprings of A is higher than the survivability of offsprings of B. That's why A is more fit here. So basically, even though B has a higher reproductive rate, it does not mean that it has a higher fitness, but uh, the hello, hello. Does anyone have any question? Okay. Yeah, but in this case, A has higher fitness because more of its offspring survive in the next generation. Okay. The fourth thing is fitness should be measured across several generations. It is a long-term measure. So we don't have fitness of a organism as such, but across different generations of a given species or a population, we have a value of fitness based on how many of the individuals are living and how many of the individuals are dying. Okay. The last thing is fitness works at the level of a complete organism, not an individual trait such as size or speed. So, for example, let's say we have a cheetah, which uh, basically we have a cheetah which has a very high speed. And we have a lion which has a slower speed, right? Not a lion, sorry. We have one
Sir, you've gone on mute.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. So as I was saying, let's say you have two cheetahs. One has a higher speed and one has a lower speed. The first cheetah might be able to catch more prey because it can run faster, whereas the second one might not be able to catch more prey because it's not able to run faster. Uh, does that mean that the fitness of cheetah 1 is higher than the fitness of cheetah 2? It might not necessarily be true because since cheetah 1 has a higher speed, it might be needing more food to survive because of its high rate of metabolism. Whereas because cheetah 2 does not have a high speed, it does not need that much nutrients or food to survive. So it can probably survive on a lower amount of prey or a lesser number of prey. Right. So the fitness works at the level of a complete organism. So you need to not just worry about one trait such as the size or but all the traits that an animal has combined give you the fitness of the organism. Okay. Yeah. Next, we come to natural selection. So what is natural selection? Natural selection is basically the process in nature by which only those organisms that are best adapted to their environment tend to survive and transmit their genetic characteristics to the succeeding generations, while those that are less adapted tend to be eliminated. So, for example, let's say we have two species, species uh, A and species B. Both of them are herbivores that eat grass. Both of them live in a grassland. But the rate at which A eats grass is higher compared to the rate at which B eats grass. So, so the rate of eating of A is higher, whereas the rate of eating of B is lower. So what happens is many of the individuals of species A will, like the individuals of species A will eat grass faster than the individuals of species B. And since we have a limited amount of resources or a limited amount of, let's say, grass in the field, the most of the grass will be eaten by species A and less grass will be eaten by species B. So if this trend continues to follow for a few generations, what happens is most individuals of species A will tend to get grass, eat grass, and survive, whereas most individuals of species B will tend to not find a lot of grass and tend to die. So eventually, what happens is the species B is fully wiped out, whereas we have only species A in the place, which is better adapted for that environment because it can eat grass faster than the other species that are present in that environment. Okay, so there are 5 steps in natural selection. The first thing is variation. So variation is basically the basis on which natural selection and evolution works. So to have anything, so basically uh, all individuals in the population are not identical. They have different characteristics. So for example, some plants might be taller, some plants might be shorter, even though they are of the same population. Uh, some cheetahs might run fast, some cheetahs might run slow, and things like that. So, since there is some variation, uh, what happens is when the environment changes a little or something happens, part of the population that has some uh, characteristics, such as, let's say, for example, in a population of cheetahs, let's say the cheetahs and there's a population of deers that live nearby or impalas that live nearby. And the cheetahs basically prey on the impalas. So let's say the impalas slowly start running faster. Okay. So basically the environment is changing. The impalas are starting to run faster. the cheetah are not able to catch up. So what happens? Some individuals of the cheetah population which might be able to run faster will be able to catch impalas, whereas the others that are not able to run faster will not be able to catch impalas. So there needs to be some sort of variation so that when there's a change in the environment, some individuals are doing better and some individuals are not doing better. And the individuals that are doing better can pass on their genes to the next individual, like to their progeny. Okay. The second step is overpopulation. So organisms often tend to produce offsprings that are excess. So for example, a female mosquito may lay up to 500 to 1000 eggs, but not all of them will survive. Okay. The third thing is struggle for existence. Since there is variation, since there is overpopulation, variation as in some people are better at gathering resources, and overpopulation as in there is like a lot of growth in the population, and the fact that resources are limited. So not all of the offsprings that are present in a given population will can be accommodated or can derive enough, can get enough resources to survive to the next generation. So there's a struggle for existence. The fourth point is survival of the fittest. So only those individuals that are best able to obtain and use resources will be able to survive and reproduce. And the fifth thing is basically where we see evolution in action is changes in the gene pool. So basically, the inherited characters that are better adapted for a given environment tend to increase in frequency, and the inherited characters that are not doing well in a given environment tend to decrease in frequency. So these changes can be tracked in a population, in the gene pool of the populations, by seeing like what proportion of the population basically has a given trait. Right. So we'll take a case study and we'll walk through all these 5 steps. So we'll talk about the peppered moth. So these are moths that are found in the UK. So uh, basically, they have some sort of variation because they have two different morphs. One of them is, so the same species has individuals which are light in color and also individuals which are very dark in color. So there is some variation in the population. Overpopulation, since the females lay around 2000 eggs at a time, there is exponential growth of the population. So the population tends to increase more than eventually the number of individuals will be much more and the resources will be less. So that will create a struggle for existence. The other thing that can create a struggle for existence, which is a major driving force in this case, is predation. So there are a lot of different birds that feed on these moths. And if they can, so they basically see the moths and then eat them. So if they can see the moths easily, they are able to feed on them, and thus these moths then slowly perish. So what happens? Uh, So let's say we have an unpolluted environment. Uh, for example, before industrialization in UK, we had an unpolluted environment, and these white things that you see. So this is basically a tree. And the white things that you see are basically lichens in the tree. So lichens tend to grow in places where there's less amount of pollution. And since these lichens are white, so the white moths or the white colored individuals in the peppered moth population are not that easily seen in the background, whereas the dark moths are very easy to spot in this background. Right. So birds, when they tend to come and eat, they are more likely to figure out where the dark individuals are compared to where the whiter individuals are. And thus, uh, eventually the number of dark individuals will decrease in the population. If this case stays the same. So in this case, when the bark is white because of lichens, the fitter individual here will be the white colored moth, whereas the black colored moth is not that fit because it can be easily spotted and predated. Now, this is in a polluted environment. So basically, after industrial revolution, there was a lot of smoke and carbon and soot, which led to a lot of air pollution. This pollution led to a decrease in the lichens on the trees and also led to deposits of black colored carbon soot on the tree, which made the tree barks very darker. And now you can see that it's much easier to spot the white colored individual of the peppered moth on a bark like this compared to the dark colored individual. And thus, in this case, after industrial revolution, the fitter individual would be the one with the dark color or the dark morph. Whereas the white morph is no longer fit because the environment has changed and it's more easier to spot the white for birds to spot the white morph and eat them. Now, the last point we had was changes in gene pool. So basically, as I was telling you, pre-industrial evolution, the bark was white and it was difficult to spot the white morph, but it was very easy to spot the black morph. So the number of basically white moths was quite high. The number of white individuals in the population was quite high. Whereas the number of black individuals or dark individuals in the population was quite low. And after industrial evolution, the bark became dark. So the darker individuals got benefits because now they are difficult to spot, whereas the lighter individuals are easier to spot. And so slowly the population of the lighter individual, so the number of lighter individuals kept on decreasing, whereas the number of darker individuals kept on increasing. And uh, people have tracked the proportion of these different colored individuals in the population, and people have seen that basically, due to the environment, there are changes in the gene pool where the frequency of the genes that have the dark coloration increases and the frequency of the genes that have light coloration decreases post-industrial evolution. This is an example of evolution happening within our lifetime due to industrial evolution. Does anyone have any questions till now? Okay. So this is basically the whole thing in the 5 steps of natural selection. So just to recap, in a species, all individuals are not identical. They have different characteristics or different traits and different features. These variation combined with the fact that most organisms tend to produce excess offsprings create a struggle for existence because resources are also limited and not all of them are not all of them are well adapted or have traits that help them survive in a given like resource limited area. And due to overpopulation, there's a lot of competition among the same species, like individuals of the same species. That's why only the fittest individuals which are able to survive this competition survive and reproduce. And over time, the survival of fittest leads to changes in the gene pool of the population or the species, which can be tracked. And we can see that here basically there's a variation in the population. There's overpopulation because there's a lot of offsprings, and there's a struggle for existence due to predation and due to resource limitation. Uh, in different environments, different morphs are fitter, and when these environments change from one to the other, there are associated changes in the gene pool or the frequency of the uh, genes belonging to the different colors or the different morphs. Okay. Now that is the theory of natural selection. Now there are 3 kinds of selections that can happen. So for example, in the first case, which is directional selection, what happens is the dotted line is the original uh, distribution of a trait in a given population. So for example, let's say we have lizards, and this is basically the lizard tail length from short to medium to long. So some lizards will have shorter tails, some lizards will have longer tails, but most of them have some medium, uh, what do you say, length of the tail, right? So the dotted line here represents the original population. In directional selection, what happens is the mean of the population is shifted in one direction. So basically, due to selection, there's a increase in the tail length. So for example, let's say we are talking about these lizards, they have tails, and if they have very long tails that are wiggling when they're walking, it looks like a snake and it scares away their predators. Okay, so if the tail is longer, it looks more like a snake, and thus eventually individuals that have longer tails tend to survive better, and individuals that have shorter tails don't tend to survive that great. So what happens is more individuals that have even longer tails come up, and the individuals which have very short tails tend to die out. And so the whole graph is shifted to the right. So this is called directional selection, where the selection is acting to change the mean in one direction. Next, we have stabilizing selection. So the dotted line again is the distribution for the original population, and the colored one is the distribution for the population after selection. In stabilizing selection, what happens is the mean value is more amplified and the other extreme values are slowly eradicated. So for example, let's say we are now talking about a cat's tail. So let's say like when cats have very short tails, they are not able to balance when they're jumping from one place to the other, or when they're jumping between tails, or like from one boundary to the other, or jumping up and down. Okay. But if cats have very long tails, then they are dragging on the ground and it uses a lot of energy to maintain that. So cats that have very long tails do not survive, and cats that have very short tails also do not survive. So cats that have a medium size of tails tend to survive better. And that's why the shorter ones, the cats that have shorter or longer tails tend to die off, whereas the cats that have some medium amount of medium length of tail tend to increase in number. This is called stabilizing selection. The mean of the population for the trait does not change, but the distribution gets more narrow. Okay. The third kind of selection that we can have is called disruptive selection. So here the dotted line again is the original population. And in disruptive selection, what happens is there are two peaks now instead of one peak. And basically the mean is like, so there are like two modes instead of one for the distribution. And the middle one is somehow punished for their uh, features. So as an example here, we can talk about like, so let's say in squirrels, again for tails, short tails help keep predators from catching the squirrels in the ground because they have shorter tails, they can run away faster and the predator can't, so their body size decreases and the predator can't reach them. Long tails are good for balancing in the trees. So if some squirrels that have very long tails might prefer to stay in the trees and forage in the trees, whereas squirrels that have short tails may prefer to basically forage on the ground and look for things in the ground. Whereas squirrels that have a medium size tail cannot do both because if they forage on the ground, the predators will catch them. And basically, they don't have a lot of balance to maneuver over uh, different trees and branches. Right. So eventually, so basically, the fitness of medium-tailed squirrels here is less compared to fitness of large-tailed or small-tailed squirrels, and thus in the population, we see that after selection, the mean, the median value decreases, whereas now we have two peaks at the two ends. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Okay.
No, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll look at some examples now. So examples of like these different kinds of selections that might be found in nature. So the first one is directional selection. So where basically Peter Grant studied a Galapagos. So Galapagos Islands is a place. This is basically where Darwin went before he came up with the theory of evolution. And these Galapagos Islands have these birds called finches. So there are a lot of different kinds of finches. Uh, so in 1977, in the island, there was a drought, and basically this guy Peter Grant, he was studying these finches in the island, and he saw that before the drought, the peak depth of a given species called Daphne major was lower compared to the same species after the drought. Okay, so basically what they saw was when there was before there was a drought, there was no selection pressure acting on this finch. It was foraging on all the different kinds of seeds and nuts and things that are found in the island. But when there was a drought on the island, what happened was most of the soft and small seeds tend to uh, not small, soft seeds basically perish and the plants basically perish. And only the plants which had very hard seeds remained in the island. So basically, it was more like to break the seeds, you needed more force, and your beak needed to be bigger so that you can break these seeds and eat, uh, basically. So what happened after drought is they again measured the beak depth of this population, and they saw that after the drought, the beak depth has increased because now they are feeding on a different thing. And in the second graph, basically, they show that this is a heritable trait because if the parent has a longer bill depth, the offspring also has a longer bill depth. So there's a linear relationship between both. So that means this trait is inherited from the parent to the offspring. Okay. And the selection is directional because the mean was lower, and after some time, the mean has shifted in one direction. The mean has increased. Okay. The second example we have is for stabilizing selection. So uh, let's say the number of eggs that a robin lays. So robins typically lay about 4 eggs in each clutch or each time they lay eggs. Uh, if they have more than 4 eggs, let's say 7 or 8 eggs, what happens is they are not able to feed the number of offsprings that they have, and many of them tend to die off, thus decreasing their fitness. And if they have a small number of eggs, let's say 1 or 2 eggs, then maybe the eggs don't hatch. Maybe there's a predator, there's a snake or something that gets the egg, or maybe the egg falls from the nest or something happens, and thus they don't leave any offsprings. So here, basically, the uh, medium value, which is around 4 eggs, is basically the best option for the robins, and that's why this is an example of stabilizing selection, where basically um, birds that they lay very large number of eggs or very small number of eggs do not have very high fitness compared to birds that lay around an average of 4 eggs. The third example is for disruptive selection. So this example comes from the Africa's swallowtail butterfly. Mm. So basically the original population distribution. So let's say here is basically the color. So the females of this species is found in females are found in many different colors. So the most like the median color is basically what the males and females are both found in. Okay, but here due to selection, uh, these different color morphs are more successful compared to the median morphs because the one on the left here, the female is mimicking another species that is basically poisonous or unpalatable for the predator. So the predator tends to avoid butterflies that are colored like this, and also butterflies that are colored like this, because here the female is mimicking a second species that is also unpalatable. But here, this is the natural color of the butterfly, and there's no mimicry. So the predator knows that it is safe to eat butterflies of this color. So the predator tends to eat more butterflies of this color and less butterflies of the other two colors. And that's why we have a disruptive selection where we have two moths that have higher fitness than the median moth. Okay. And the last thing, does anyone have any questions? Okay. And the last thing Sir talked about is called coevolution. So coevolution is basically the evolution of two or more species that interact closely with one another, with each species adapting to changes in the other species. So, what does this mean basically? So what this means is uh, two or more species that are living in the similar area, interacting closely with one another, maybe depend on each other for something. If one of them has some evolution or something, some trait, the other one evolves a trait that helps it co-evolve or coexist with the first species. So, for example, here we can see clownfish and sea anemone. So the sea anemone tentacles basically have some sort of toxin which basically it uses to scare away predators. The clownfish basically is resistant to the toxin produced by the sea anemone because it has evolved resistance to the toxin. Why? Because it stays within the sea anemone and that helps it stay away from predators, which might be coming after it, but will get stung by the sea anemone. Some of the other examples for coevolution are, sorry, in buffaloes, the buffaloes and these Cape buffaloes and cheetah, this co-evolution of different features, such as the evolution of this horns by the buffalo, prevents the cheetah from attacking them from the front, and thus the cheetah tries to be more stealthy and tries to attack from behind, or it tries to attack calves and stuff instead of larger individuals. Zebras have like stripes, which are basically evolution that help it survive better against animals such as cheetah or lion or tiger, which are basically cheetah or lion, which are basically found in the same area. So because of the stripes, what happens is it's very difficult to track a single organism, the single individual of a zebra in a large group of zebra, because all of them look very similar. So when a cheetah might be approaching, uh, so let's say we have like, uh, let's say we have a lot of zebras here, 10 or 20, and we have a cheetah here. And let's say the cheetah is initially approaching, looking at this zebra here. So when the cheetah tries to come in and grab the zebra, all of them are moving, all of them are scared, all of them are moving. And the cheetah then doesn't like isn't able to track this single individual in this group movement because of the stripes. It's very difficult to see where the head of the individual is, and the cheetah then tries to track another individual instead of this one. But then when it tries to go near it, due to all the confusion, it again cannot find that zebra and so on. So basically, zebras have evolved this stripe so that they can be like they can have better protection against animals that are attacking them. Again, impalas have evolved great speed to run away from cheetahs, and because of that, and because of things like the cave buffalo, cheetahs have evolved stealth, where they basically uh, go slowly and try to get as close as possible to the prey without disturbing them, such as by hiding in grass and slowly walking towards them. And then at the end, they just pounce on the prey, or when they are vulnerable, when they are not looking at them, or they're like behind the prey, and they try to catch prey. So basically, all these things that are like uh, all of these are basically examples of predation, which is ecological interaction. And basically, this is an example of mutualism where basically, so the sea anemone also benefits from the clownfish in some ways. So basically, this is an example of mutualism where basically we have, which is the ecological interaction between two species. There's another kind of ecological interaction between two species. So what you can say is like, because of these interactions, the traits that are found in these different animals are changing over time. And thus, these animals are evolving over time because of these ecological interactions. And thus, we can say that ecological interactions drive evolution. So, that is the relationship between ecology and evolution. Does anyone have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Uh, so, mm,
Excuse me, sir.
yeah.
Sir, is it possible that for these ecological interactions to break and form some other new examples of coevolution?
Can you repeat that? Sorry. Is it possible?
Sir, like, is it possible for these current ecological interactions, like there are some current ecological interactions, right, like coevolution? So, is it possible for them to break away and form the other interactions with other organisms?
Breakaway as in so there are some coevolutions which are very specific. So for example, like hummingbirds and some species of flowers. And because hummingbirds have a very long beak and only very few species of flowers have that long, slender flowers. So basically, hummingbirds are very co-evolved to survive with these species. So over time, if one of them dies, then there's a high possibility that the other, like if the plant dies, then there's a high possibility that hummingbirds will also die. Or if the hummingbirds die, then there's a high possibility that the plants will also die. And it's kind of difficult to break away from that. But there are other cases, such as like these. So the zebra stripes work for a range of predators and not just one predator. But uh, eventually, if like there are more cheetahs and lions in a given population that are feeding on the zebras, then these zebras might face more uh, predation pressure from these cheetahs, and they might evolve some specific evolutionary tactics against these cheetahs. So that way, they might break away from lions, but be more specific towards cheetah. Does that answer your question? Is that what you were asking?
Yes, sir.
Great. Does anyone have any other questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
Sir, in the previous volatile butterfly evolution example, why was it only female butterflies?
So that is what is found in nature. So the males one generally, like males one are only found in this color, whereas the female ones have variation in color that ranges from these different moths. So the males one only have this color. So probably there is some genetic basis due to which they're not able to produce different colors.
Oh, okay.
Sir, but if the male ones are like the color which is there in the middle, if they are like that, and if nature is not allowing, like it is against them, so how is the population of those butterflies increasing? I mean, how are they able to survive their population?
Can you ask that again? So
Sir,
yeah,
uh, I was saying that like for this particular butterfly population, if the
yeah.
male if the color which the male has, if that is not if nature is against it, and if it is favoring the color which the female butterflies have, so then how are these butterflies able to maintain the population, like if the male ones are not much favored by nature then?
So here you see that the original population might have been like this, and the population now has two peaks, but still the middle part here is not zero exactly. So there are still there is still some fitness that is there in this morph. So which is why there are let's say around 50% individuals or 40% individuals of this color that are surviving, but 100% individuals of or 90% individuals of the other colors are surviving. So the difference in color, the proportion is there, but there is still a lot of these butterflies that are still found in nature. That's why it's surviving. If the population of, if the number of these butterflies in the middle drops to zero, then the species will go extinct, which is rarely the case because nature tends to preserve variation. So there is, even if these butterflies are very low in number, there might, from these butterflies might give rise to butterflies that are more similar to this just because of mutation or random chance. Right. So it's difficult to remove all the variation that is there in a population. So there is always some amount of variation and some individuals exhibiting the different moths or different colors. But what you're saying is true. If all of the population, all of the individuals that are of the middle color, it's not favored by nature, but it's not like it is actively what do you say? So predation is not uh, predation means that some of the organisms are dying, not all of them, right? So maybe the intensity of predation is not that high, so that all the organisms are not dying. But if the intensity of predation increases on the middle morph, then that will be an issue for the species.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to ask.
So in this example, the sex ratio might be varying. Isn't that what you said? No?
Sex ratio might be varying, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so someone asked about the PPT. So I'll be uploading the PPT to this Google Drive. I'll I have not uploaded anything yet, but here is the link to the Drive folder. I can put it on the chat. And also the lecture is being recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube. You can check out this link where I'll be uploading all the recorded sessions. I'll just share both the links now. So here is the Drive link. I have not uploaded anything yet, but after today's session, I'll upload today's lecture. And after the next section, I'll upload the next and so on. And And here is the link to the YouTube channel. So after this session, I'll be uploading this. So probably by tomorrow. So yeah, so I hope everyone is familiar with the NPTEL thing. So after you open the course, here are the lectures, so you can go through them. And for this week, we have a assignment. So the due date is 7th of August. So make sure that you answer all the questions and submit your answers before 7th of August. They're really simple MCQ questions. And we'll have these kinds of assignments for each of the weeks. Does anyone have any other questions? I'll just flash all the slides again. If anyone have any issues or questions in any of the slides, please ask. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Basically, what is ecology? What are the different things we study in ecology, such as habitat, biodiversity, population interactions, community interaction, and the effect of changes. The three major approaches to ecology. Mm, a historical overview where we talk about different people and what all they did. Yeah. And what is ecology, what is evolution, basically what is adaptation, what is genetic adaptation, examples of adaptation, fitness of an organism, characteristics of fitness, what is natural selection, the 5 steps of natural selection. We learned about a case study, the peppered moth case, how evolution occurs here, and how we can see changes in gene pool, different kinds of selections, directional, stabilizing and disruptive. Examples of different kinds of selection. Directional is the Galapagos finches, where the beak size increased after drought due to eating more harder nuts. Stabilizing selection, which is basically the number of eggs laid by birds, such as robins. Disruptive selection, such as African swallowtail, coloration of wing, and coevolution, which is basically evolution of 2 or more closely related species with each other. In some examples of coevolution. So we'll have the class till 15 more minutes and 10 more minutes maybe. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask anytime. I'm sharing the link. So this is a link to a Drive folder. It is not a link to the PPT. I have not uploaded the PPT. I'll upload it. Give me just 5-10 minutes.
Hi, sir.
Yeah, hi.
Sir, can you
Yeah, hi.
can you please talk about the Lotka-Volterra model once more? The
So,
initial.
yeah, continue.
Yeah, that model. Can you please talk about that once more?
Okay, 1 second. So here is the link. The PPT will be uploaded here in 2-3 minutes. So in the Lotka-Volterra model, 1 second. Yeah, the PPT is uploaded. 1 second, sorry, I'll answer your question. So can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So basically you have a population of predator. Let's say it can be a cheetah, and you have population of prey. Let's say it's a impala. So let's say initially you have X number of predators and N number of preys. Okay. And let's say N is initially much greater than X. Since there's a higher, like very high population of prey and very low population of predator, what happens is everyone gets to eat food. All of the predators are able to catch prey and eat food and sustain and grow and reproduce. So what happens? They multiply more, and this changes to Y. Now it increases to Y. So let's say now uh, Y is greater than X. Okay. Uh, Now, since the number of predators initially was X that were hunting on these N prey, now the number of predators has increased to Y. So the predation pressure on N on the prey is very high. So more number of impalas are being caught and eaten. So what happens? The number of impalas decreases. So M here is less than N. So the population of prey decreases. Now, since the population of prey decreases, the population of decrease of population of prey causes a decrease in the population of predator because they don't have enough food anymore to survive, and the predator in like tends to die. So the if you plot a graph, and let's say this is the initial population of prey, this is the initial population of predator. So what happens is, so let's say the prey is also increasing. So the predator population tends to increase because there is more prey. And since the predator population is now increasing at this point of time, let's say T1. So at T0, which is the initial point of time, there is more prey and less predator. So the population of predator tends to increase. But at T1, there is like more number of prey and less number of predators for that amount of prey. So what happens? So basically the prey population tends to die and the number of prey decreases and the number of predator is still increasing. After a point when they cross, now let's say this is T1, sorry, not this, this is T1. So now what happens? The number of prey is more than the number of predator is more than the number of prey. So more predators are hunting more prey and the prey population tends to decrease more. But once the prey population tends to decline, the predator has no food. So the predator population also tends to decline. Now again, when the predator population dips below the prey population, the prey is able to reproduce and survive better. So the prey population increases and the predator population also tends to increase because of that. So we have this kind of like oscillating relationship where basically the at any point of time, the number of predators depends not only on the number of prey, but also on the past number of predators. So in a way, the abundance of predators depends on the past abundance of predators, and the abundance of prey also depends on the past abundance of prey and the abundance of predators. So the Lotka-Volterra model basically mathematically defines these equations and these relations and how they vary across time. Is that clear?
Yes, sir, it's clear. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, so we'll wrap up today's session and we'll meet in the next class, which is on 2nd of August, which is Friday at 6 to 8 p.m. Thank you for attending and hope you'll attend the next one also. Please let me know if you guys have any more doubts or questions, or if you have any more doubts, we can talk about it next class also. No worries. Please go through the lectures for second week and before the class, and we'll go through them together also. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.